This app, we are live streaming, but it's only 1:59, so we're a little bit early. So
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the District Library Book Objection Committee meeting. The purpose of today's meeting is to review an objection to the book titled 19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult. I'm Dawn Sapp, Associate Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Mr. Forson has designated me as chair of the committee, and I'll be facilitating today's meeting. School-based and district staff, as well as parents and community volunteers, are invited to participate on each committee. Today's meeting will result in a recommendation that will be forwarded to Mr. Forson, St. Johns County School District Superintendent. This committee meeting is public record and therefore subject to sunshine law. It is being live streamed for public viewing. Committee members are not required to have their camera on during the meeting. We are committed to civility and decorum. Please assist us in maintaining a constructive meeting environment by remaining respectful of each participant during the meeting and afterwards. Additional discussion of the objecting party or committee members outside of the meeting is discouraged. Disparaging comments are contrary to district expectations regarding character and civility. Committee members received several resources in advance of the meeting. The resources included the objecting party's request for reconsideration, a copy of the book, Florida statutes, Florida Department of Education guidance for library media services, professional source reviews, St. Johns County School Board rules, the Library Bill of Rights, and a copy of the School Library Media Material Evaluation Checklist. The process for today is as follows. First, the objecting party will have the opportunity to address the committee. They will provide any information they deem compelling or new regarding their request. Next, the committee will have a discussion utilizing the School Library Media Material Evaluation Checklist. Finally, the decision by majority vote will determine a recommendation for Superintendent Forson. There are two options: retain the book for a designated level or remove the book from St. Johns County School District libraries. For our meeting today, both agreeable and opposing viewpoints are welcome. Are there any questions so far? Okay, let's begin. Jean Moore is the objecting party for 19 minutes. Ms. Moore, this is your time to address the committee. You have up to 5 minutes to share your objection.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity for me to share my thoughts. My objection to this book are that it contains sexual activities, sexual nudity, profanity, derogatory terms, violence, hate, abortion, and suicide commentary. This was a tragic and disturbing story of a boy that was bullied to the extent that it drove him to bring weapons to school and take out the bullies. And it was an interesting story, but the sex scenes between Matt and Josie were completely unnecessary, and those scenes by themselves make the book inappropriate for school. It should be noted that this title was removed from Clay and Martin County schools last year, indicating that committees and superintendents in those counties agreed that the content was not appropriate for school libraries. As examples, Matt had already peeled off her clothes, and now he was leaning over her like a tidal wave, pulling down his boxers. He sprang free and settled between Josie's legs. He kissed her so hard that it hurt. She said, pushing at him. Relax, Matt murmured, and then he sank his teeth into her shoulder. He pinned her hands over her head and ground his hips against her. She could feel his erection hard and hot against her stomach. It wasn't that way normally, but Josie had to admit it was exciting. She couldn't remember ever feeling so heavy, as if her heart were beating between her legs. She clawed at Matt's back to bring him closer. Yeah, he groaned, and he pushed her thighs apart. And then suddenly Matt was inside her, pumping so hard that she scooted backward on the carpet, burning the backs of her legs. Wait, Josie said. She tried to roll away beneath him, but he clamped his hand over her mouth and drove harder and harder until Josie felt him come. Semen sticky and hot pulled on the carpet beneath her. Parents have almost no ability to monitor or protect their child from what lies in the media center. The Follett system does not provide enough information for parents to compile lists to opt out. The opt-out list does not stop a child from pulling a book from the shelf without checking it out. It's an ineffective way for parents to protect their child from graphic sex, violence, rape, pedophilia, profanity, etc., etc. Parents alone determine if they want their child to have access to adult materials, not the child and certainly not the school district. To solely focus on the obscenity laws related to sexual content is a flawed methodology. Although books are not rated like movies are, it would make sense for a committee to use the same sort of logic when determining appropriate content for students. Our movies contain strong and graphic violent content, disturbing content, sexual content, graphic nudity, drug use, and strong language. An R-rated movie is not appropriate for school, so why would the same content in a book be okay for school? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Committee members, we will refer to the school library media material evaluation form for our discussion. As a reminder, Florida statute states that any materials used in a classroom, made available in a school or classroom library, or included on a reading list may be objected to for 4 specific reasons. Reason number 1, the material is pornographic or prohibited under section 847.012 of Florida statute. The material must be removed if the majority of the committee agrees with the objecting party that the material is pornographic or prohibited, and Mr. Forson agrees with the recommendation. For the remaining 3 reasons, the committee will determine if there is an appropriate grade level or if the material should be removed. The material depicts or describes sexual conduct as defined in 847.001 for N19, or the material is not suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material, or the material is inappropriate for the grade level and age group for which the material is used. Keep in mind that our final task on the form is to make a recommendation to Superintendent Forson. There are 2 options: retain the book for a designated level or remove the book from St. Johns County School District libraries. Again, statute is clear that we must recommend to remove the title if the majority of the committee determines a violation of question 4 on the checklist. The floor will be open to discussion, and each committee member will have the opportunity to share. Comments will be summarized to provide an overall committee response for each question. Please remember to raise your hand to provide a comment. For our meeting today, both agreeable and opposing viewpoints are welcome. Let's begin. We will go through the checklist together. I will read each question. I will ask if there are any comments. If there are hands raised, we'll acknowledge those comments, and then we'll move on to a vote. Let's begin. Okay, on the material evaluation checklist, the first question is the objecting party's challenge of the material cites that, and we will place into this answer exactly what was provided on Ms. Moore's objection sheet, and she did indicate 3 of the 4 reasons. So we will include those, and she also had an attachment. So we'll take care of question number 1. Question number 2, specific pages in the material cited by the objecting party were reviewed. For this question, this is just to verify for Mr. Forson that the members of the committee had a chance to review the specific material objecting party. So if you did review those pages, please vote yes at this time. If you did not, please vote no. Could I have everyone vote at this time? If you had a chance to review the pages, you'll say yes. If not, you'll say no.
Ms. Sapp, we have 8 yes votes. You may now remove your vote.
Thank you. Question number 2 is similar in that for this one, you are voting to verify that you had a chance to review the professional and/or crowdsourced reviews that were provided. So if you did look at those reviews and consider them, please vote yes. If you did not consider those reviews, please vote no.
Ms. Sapp, we have 8 yes votes for question 3. You may now remove your vote.
Question number 4, now that we are starting to go through the reasons for objections, I will read the question. I'll give a chance to see if anyone has any comments. We'll wait and see if there are any hands, and then I'll call for a vote. So for question number 4, is the material pornographic or prohibited under Florida Statute 847.012? Are there any comments? Don't see any hands up, so we'll go ahead and vote. Is the material pornographic or prohibited under Florida Statute 847.012?
Ms. Sapp, we do have a hand up. Caroline, I'm going to lower your hand so that we can see your vote. And then we'll call on you. If you can go ahead and put your vote up again, Caroline. Thank you. Appreciate that.
We just have to make
Yes.
sure that they have a chance to capture a screenshot
Yeah.
for Mr. Forson.
Ms. Sapp, we have 1 yes vote and 7 no votes for question 4. And then Carol, you may now remove your vote, and Caroline.
Go ahead,
and
Caroline.
go.
Yeah, so I find this statute confusing because it kind of circularly refers back to a different statute. So like the way I read it was that it didn't need to have pictures, like this isn't a graphic novel, but it refers to, let me think, it says any book, pamphlet, magazine, printed matter, however reproduced, that contains any matter defined in 847.001, explicit and detailed verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual excitement or sexual conduct, and that is harmful to minors. And so, like, I understand some people might be thinking that the scenes like what the lady read out loud, that's supposed to indicate like a unwelcome sexual experience, because she's clearly saying that she's got a problem with it to some degree, but I think it's pretty explicit, so I'm confused how we can have that read aloud but it not be pornographic or prohibited.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to respond? Go ahead, Darian.
Hi, yeah, I think that the difference here is that the end of that clause was, and it's harmful to students. So I don't believe that scene is harmful to students. I think especially since the one that she was referencing was an assault. I think that if anything, it could be helpful to other students who have experienced something like that. And I know that's a high number of students. And perhaps that could even be a help to them and lead them into seeing that they're not alone and they could have a conversation with a trusted adult. And I think that's the part that's missing. This isn't a harmful scene. It is a depiction of a reality that a lot of people face, unfortunately.
Dr. Lawson, can you tell me whose hand was up next?
Yes, Ms. Million was up. It was had her hand up next.
Okay, go ahead, Carolyn.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'd like to clarify a few things. Had the book been read in its entirety and not taken out of context, it would have been noted that it was not an assault. It was more a conflict of a condom issue. And just to clarify with the harmful to minors, there has to be 3 criteria that need to be met in order for something to be deemed harmful to minors. It has to be prurient, shameful, morbid interest, patently offensive, with, like adults would think that all adults will think this is pornographic. And it needs to be taken as a whole that the material is without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. And it has to meet all 3 of those criteria for it to be deemed harmful to minors. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Go ahead, Caroline.
So I agree that it was an inappropriate sexual experience, and that I did read the whole book to clarify. I didn't just take that section out of context. But I don't feel that the book made it patently clear to any young reader that the relationship between Matt and Josie crosses a line. I think there's a lot of the time that Josie is indicating that she is totally madly in love with Matt and that she doesn't have any real problems. She indicates herself that she's excited by the experience. And so I found it could fall into the category of harmful to minors because it was not clarified to be completely inappropriate. I think an adult can see that. I'm not certain that a teenager has the maturity to understand the difference.
Thank you, Caroline. Abigail? You may need to unmute your mic, Abigail.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Sorry. I think Caroline clarified what she was saying, but for me, I drew a distinction between the first objection and the second objection, where the second one is, does it describe sexual conduct? And the first is like, is it pornographic such that all adults would think it was offensive? And so that is why I voted no. I don't think all adults would think this is offensive. And then, there's the different question, the second one.
Thank you, Abigail. Okay, we appreciate the discussion on that. We're going to move forward to question number 5. Does the material depict or describe sexual conduct defined in Florida Statute 847.001, paren 19? Are there any comments before we vote for question 5? Abigail, go ahead.
I remembered to unmute this time. So this is the one where I would say I plan to vote yes, which you will see, that it is sexual conduct, but then it falls under the rest of the description, which is it harmful? Is it prurient? I think was the word. So anyway, that's how I draw the distinction.
Any other comments before we vote? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Does the material depict or describe sexual conduct defined in Florida Statute 847.001, paren 19? So waiting on a couple more votes. Does the material depict or describe sexual conduct defined in Florida Statute 847.001, paren 19?
Ms. Sapp, for question 5, we have 8 yes votes. You may now remove your vote.
Thank you. Waiting on one. There we go. Okay, question number 6. Is the material unsuited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented? Are there any comments before we vote? Okay, I don't see any hands for this one, so we'll go ahead and vote. Is the material unsuited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented?
Ms. Sapp, for question 6, we have 1 yes vote and 7 no votes. You may now remove your vote.
Thank you. For question number 7, is the material inappropriate for the grade level and age group for which the material is used? Dr. Lawson, can you tell us? I'm sorry, there's Amelia. Amelia Zakowski, can you tell us where it's currently located?
Yes, ma'am. It is currently located in grades 9 through 12, which is our high school library collections.
Thank you. So this material is currently available for grades 9 through 12. The question that we're addressing, is the material inappropriate for the grade level and age group for which the material is used? Are there any comments? Go ahead, Abigail.
I went back and forth on this a lot actually, because I agreed with Caroline that I wasn't sure if every kid would realize that it's supposed to be that Matt is doing things that are inappropriate, that he is coercing Josie in a way that is inappropriate. But where I eventually landed is that hopefully they do figure out that Matt is the antagonist of the book, that he was bullying Peter, and that they would draw the connection between his behavior with Peter being very inappropriate and his behavior with Josie being inappropriate. And I also, you know, sometimes a kid can read a book and get ideas in their head that they wouldn't have otherwise had. But I don't think that any of the things that happen in the book are ideas that kids haven't had already. And being able to really empathize with the character and see what Matt's behavior looked like from Peter's and Josie's point of view, I think is a valuable way for students to see what bad behavior looks like.
Thank you, Abigail. Go ahead, Caroline.
So I think so far we've focused exclusively on the sex scenes between Matt and Josie. There were several other topics that were discussed that I thought were, you know, not really age appropriate. For example, on page 322, she Googles how to induce her own abortion and settles on, I think she believes that the least barbaric option is taking vitamin C to excess. She then, like 7 pages later, she suffers a miscarriage in her bed. It's unclear whether it's a miscarriage or actually an abortion, but there's no discussion of like, hey, I'm actually having a medical emergency that would require me to notify my parents or a physician. I think that this sexual abuse stuff is presented as a gray area, which maybe if you read this book with your child or in context, you could guide them through their thoughts about where their sexual boundaries are. Obviously, there's the school shooting issue. There's drug use, inhaling vials of unknown substances at nightclubs. I just think these are a lot of adult topics that we're just hoping that the kids will understand if they happen upon this book in the school library. Whereas to me, it makes more sense that if parents want their kids exposed to those topics, that they could bring those child to the public library or buy them the book or have those conversations on their own.
Thank you, Caroline. Go ahead, Darianne.
Hi, yeah, I think that having access to books in schools rather than just the public library is important. I do hear what you're saying about having a parent to guide you through this novel. I also think there is a consideration of children that don't have parents to guide them through this, who maybe look to the school librarian and need access to books in schools if they're not being taken other places. I also do think that, especially in this day and age, access to the internet, every single child has access to the internet. And even in this book, which was written years ago, the first thing she does is Google it and look it up on the internet. She doesn't go to the school library and search through books to find out how to have an abortion. So I think if our concern is that they're going to find out certain things like this, that conversation is for boundaries around the internet and not about novels that they might find at the school library.
Thank you, Darian. Abigail, go ahead.
And I had a question for you guys. If I recall correctly, we can also vote that it should only be for 11th and 12th graders, or only 12th graders. Like, was there another category beyond just all of high school?
There is not another category beyond all of high school. The monitoring of the checkout system at the high school level is 9 through 12. We do have some breakdowns in our elementary and middle schools where they're separate areas. So for high school, we maintain 9 through 12. Go ahead, Darian.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I know we're talking about this book specifically, but I would also say, if we're focusing on, well, okay, so she, looked up how to have an abortion and then it wasn't handled perfectly and it didn't come with a tailored chapter afterwards to say, hey, this is a medical emergency. I think if we start to look at books like they have to be perfect and teach a lesson, we're going to be missing out on a lot. I also think that if we, okay, let's Romeo and Juliet. I know when I was in school, I read that in the 6th grade, and that is about children who I think they're like 13 in Romeo and Juliet that commit suicide over love. And that's presented as a romantic story. There isn't an additional chapter afterwards as to why that was a bad decision. And I think that that's just what literature is. And if we expect it to be perfect and to be doling out lessons, no one's even going to want to read anything, and there's going to be nothing left to read.
Thank you, Darian. Okay, I don't see any additional hands, so it looks like we're ready to vote. So for question number 7, is the material inappropriate for the grade level and age group for which the material is used?
Ms. Sapp, for question 7, we have 1 yes vote and 7 no votes. You may now remove your vote.
Okay, at this time, we will vote on our recommendation for Superintendent Forson. Because the material is currently available in grades 9 and up, we will start there. If you want it to be maintained at status for grades 9 and up, you'll vote yes. If you want any other level to be considered, then you would vote no, and we'll go on to the next step. First one on the table will be the material is appropriate for grades 9 and up. If you agree, vote yes. If you prefer something different, vote no.
Ms. Sapp, for the recommendation to keep this book in grades 9 and up, we have 7 yes votes and 1 no vote. You may now remove your vote.
Okay, the majority of the committee has voted that the material is appropriate for grades 9 and up, so that will be our recommendation. Are there any closing comments from anyone that you'd like included in the recommendation to Mr. Forson? Go ahead, Carolyn.
I would just like to for this to be documented that for question number 3, where it says looking at professional and crowdsourced reviews, I'd just like to reiterate that crowdsourced reviews are very subject to personal bias, prejudices, and interpretations. The challenge on this book was literally taken from a specific website that we all know about, and PDFs are downloaded, and that is how all of these challenges have been based. So I think as professionals, we need to allow the media specialists to be the professional and search those professional reviews and make professional judgments based on their experience and reading the book. This was a very long book to read. So it's hard for me to imagine that many other people took the time. I'm not saying anybody on this committee, I'm talking about other people, took the time to really read the book with care and realize what an important read it is, because Jodi wrote this book right after Columbine. And in light of what is going on in our country right now, I think this is a very relevant book. And I think it teaches a lot of lessons that any students might come upon. There was one sexual scene from the entire book. It was over 20 hours long to read. So for one particular scene, I think it was just taken way out of context.
Thank you, Carolyn. Abigail, go ahead.
My hope is that kids who find this book will talk to adults about it. I know that not every kid will, and not every adult can be talked to about it. But I do not think that just because a few parents would object to their kid reading it, which is fine, that it therefore should not be accessible by any child in high school. And I did agree with Ms. Moore's point that there's not necessarily enough information on Follett for parents to figure out if they want to ban if they don't want their kids to read the book. But there are websites, like we just mentioned, where they can go and find that information and decide from there. I don't think it's a problem that that information isn't displayed in the media center.
Thank you, Abigail. Go ahead, Darian.
Hey, yeah, I also agree. I also wanted to just mention the objection that was brought forward. So my daughter is in elementary school, and she has been learning a lot about fact versus opinion. And I couldn't help but thinking about that when I was listening to the objection, and I was hearing words like not appropriate, unnecessary. And those are all absolutely valid opinions, but they are opinions nonetheless. And I have a different opinion, and one person's opinion shouldn't dictate whether or not my child and other children have access to the literature that they are more than free to tell their child they are not allowed to read. And I think that this is actually the second time I've read this book, because I read it when it did come out. And I think this book is important and does handle things well, and it deserves to stay on the shelves.
Thank you, Darian. Okay, I have a few closing things, a closing statement, and a few items for us to take care of. Thank you to all of our committee members for your participation today. We have 2 final action steps to conclude our work. First, your acknowledgement as a participant on the committee is needed on the recommendation of Mr. Forson. The recommendation, which will include notes from today's discussion, will be emailed to you. You may acknowledge participation by responding with an email, or you may review and sign the document at our Media Services office at 10 Hildreth in St. Augustine. Second thing we need to do is to return your book and any notes from your work in preparation for today's meeting to the location where you picked up your book. And we'd like everyone to try to get both of those things done by the end of the week. We'd appreciate your help with that. Are there any questions before we close the meeting? Okay, thank you. This concludes the meeting.